One of the most dramatic moments I've seen in classic literature comes at the end of the Kurt Vonnegut novel, Breakfast of Champions. At the end of the book, Kilgore Trout, one of Vonnegut's favorite characters, who appears in several of his novels, is sitting alone having a drink in a bar, minding his own business. Suddenly he feels a great presence overtake him. He begins to sweat and feel nervous. Turning towards the door, he realizes that the author of the novel himself has walked in the bar. Confronted for the first time with the reality that his whole being is reliant upon the stroke of the pen of another being, Trout panics and runs away, attempting to hide from the very source of his existence. For Trout, in that one brief moment, a particular event changed his entire perspective of the world that he inhabited. Like Adam and Eve, who only recognized that they were naked after they ate from the fruit, and who then tried to hide from God in the Garden of Eden once they discovered the existence of sin and guilt, Kilgore Trout's experience teaches us that it is possible to achieve what Abraham Joshua Heschel called radical amazement, an authentic experience of astonishment and awe that people feel when experiencing the presence of the divine. Not everyone is so fortunate to meet their maker in a bar. I wish we were. I think it would be great for temple attendance if that kind of thing happened more often. But after what we've all gone through together for more than a year now, the drudgery of this unceasing pandemic, the isolation and fear, the deterioration of our social lives, and the limitations on our freedom of choices, we are together in a collective pause that offers us an opportunity seldom appreciated or even sought after. We have been given a chance to refocus and reevaluate our mission in life and ask ourselves the question, is there more to life than what we've discovered thus far? The Torah begins its narrative of human history commenting on this exact point. The first human society was an utter failure. Though God created them the perfect world in which to live, trouble began immediately. The strong dominated the weak, justice was a laughingstock, murder, theft, and disregard for the value of human life ran rampant, and God recognized that all of creation save one family needed to be destroyed in an epic flood. Humanity's next attempt was not much more successful. Though advancements were made through scientific understanding of the world, humanity decided that it did not need a deity to govern them. In a place known as the Valley of Shinar, they embarked on building a tower whose peak would pierce the heavens and stand as a monument to human strength. Their disdain for their creator was evident in their actions, which the Midrash explains deftly. The rabbis wondered why the generation of the Tower of Babel chose to build their tower in a valley, considering their goal was to reach the heavens. Wouldn't it have made more sense to begin building the tower on top of a mountain? The Midrash explains that the site of the valley was chosen because it was in that place where the corpses that drowned in the flood gathered once the waters receded. In building their tower from that point, the builders of the tower were expressing their enmity for God. They were not interested in the ethical concepts that such faith demanded. Instead, they indulged in the greedy, egocentric, entitled style of living that had characterized the generation of the flood. Ultimately, their punishment, the confounding of their languages and their exile to the four corners of the earth, was the result of their unwillingness to transcend above personal and immediate satisfaction. They denied the existence of the divine and thus robbed themselves of attaining spiritual existence. In the generations following the flood and the Tower of Babel, there emerged a man named Abraham. As we read every year in the Passover Haggadah, Mitchila Ovdei Avodah Zara Avotenu Hayu. In the beginning, our ancestors were idol worshippers, and they devoted themselves to the service of self, to the gods of greed, and the immorality and injustice. But Abraham came along and had the wisdom to say, there's got to be something more than this. There's got to be a greater meaning to life. There's got to be something more important than service to the self. There must be a reason why we're all here. And it was that realization that God recognized in Abraham, that he should be the one who would shepherd his people towards meaningful existence based on truth and righteousness. Abraham and his wife Sarah would dedicate their lives to spreading the message of ethical behavior and spiritual attainment, of service to a single greater being who desires only that we live worthy of our spiritual capacity. Eventually, Abraham's descendants, our ancestors, would inherit the Torah as a guidebook and moral compass to lead us towards such a meaningful existence. Yet the centuries have taught us that in each day and age, our adherence to the traditions that frame our worldview is jaded by selfish pursuits, unneeded vices, and destructive desires. The Torah recognizes this, and thus instituted a weekly reset button called Shabbat. And on top of that, there's a 7-year cycle known as Shemitah, in which all life came to a grinding halt, and everyone was forced to re-examine the path their spiritual life was taking. In ancient times, our ancestors would stop in that year and ask themselves, were they on the path that Abraham identified? Or were they headed in the direction of those failed generations who squandered their opportunity to derive meaning from their days? This is a question that contemporary rabbis might ask themselves frequently. It's a topic that could be fitting for any high holy day season. However, this year, when we've been forced to pause and re-examine our purposes in life, possibly for the very first time, we're left today with no choice but to wonder, what will our post-COVID lives look like? In asking that question, we might consider what it is that we miss the most. Clearly, we miss socialization, seeing our families, spending time with each other. We also miss our freedom to do what we want when we want. We miss the freedom to travel anywhere we like, to go out safely to restaurants, to attend movies, plays, sporting events, and concerts. We miss shopping for special events that no longer take place. We miss the creature comforts that used to bring us joy. We miss not having to ever wear masks, not having to wash our hands 20 times a day, not having to wonder if the person coughing next to us is infected with the virus. We miss life as it used to be. But today, as we ponder where the coronavirus pandemic has brought us, as we remain, thanks to the Delta variant, stuck in neutral gear in our desire to return to life's normal routine, I find myself asking the question, even if all that we have that was lost have been restored, would that be all there is to life? And like Abraham, I find myself concluding, there's got to be something more than that. The famous rabbi and philosopher, Abraham Joshua Heschel, was concerned about this issue towards the end of his life. In the 1960s, he witnessed in the United States a drug addiction epidemic that he hoped would cause our country to wake up to the great problem of boredom. He recognized that our country's youth were seeking exaltation, but because they lacked the moral compass to guide their innocent and noble search for meaning, their paths were diverted towards mind-altering artificial understandings that obfuscated their conception of life's true purpose. For Heschel, a man who Martin Luther King referred to as a truly great prophet, how we think matters. How we choose to spend our time matters. If we fail to take advantage of our days, then the time we've been allotted will not amount to much worth. But on the other hand, if we have a moment in life that spurs us to think about religion and faith, no matter what religion we'd happen to be, then we can turn our thoughts into faith and our faith can lead us to action. The type of actions that leave us fulfilled and not disillusioned. It's the difference between walking out of a movie and feeling momentarily entertained and walking out of a Torah study class or a liturgical service whose aim is not to entertain, but to transform. For Heschel, this was man's search for meaning, his search for the paths that lead to exaltation. Heschel, in his genius, appreciated that growing up in a Jewish milieu offered him built-in moments of exaltation. He was taught that every moment was unique. Every day brought with it a precious opportunity. Today, this moment, this Yom Kippur, is our moment to pause, to ask ourselves what type of world we're going back to once COVID finally subsides, and to wonder, from where will true exaltation come and propel us to spiritual heights that we never knew existed? While Heschel recognized that all religions offer their adherents path towards spirituality, for Jews, a unique path was set forth by the mission of the Torah. Judaism, he argued, was about time. It was about sanctifying holy moments consistently. It was about recognizing the profundity of the Jewish calendar, about making Shabbat meaningful week in and week out. It was about the constant exploration of reaching beyond the material to gain a taste of the spiritual. It was about elevating the level of our private and public discourse. Heschel likely would have agreed with Eleanor Roosevelt when she said that simple minds talk about people, average minds talk about events, and strong minds discuss ideas. For Heschel, the Jew remained mired outside of the Jewish spiritual camp, risked trading in a birthright for exaltation in exchange for a lifetime of bewilderment and dissatisfaction. Today, on this holy day, if Heschel were here, I believe he would ask us whether or not we recognize this opportunity that we've been given today and this year to refocus. He might suggest that no single leader, no inspired preacher, or even prophet could call our attention more to the need for exaltation more than this period of social distancing. Never in our lives collectively have we been given the chance to stop and ponder how we will all return together back to normal routines. This is a big moment. Like Winston Churchill said, never waste a crisis. I believe that this moment must be taken advantage of. It's an opportunity for seeking out authentic exaltation in our lives that we simply cannot miss. For me personally, this is a message that has been reverberating inside of me for the past 2 decades. The legendary former leader of our movement, Rabbi Alexander Schindler, alav hashalom, used to say that each rabbi's career was defined by one sermon, that he or she continually repackaged and delivered it throughout his or her career. For me, my mission and my message has always been clear in my mind, and I share it with you now on this high holy day by way of one of the most powerful experiences I've ever encountered. 3 years ago, while on the March of the Living, our group was marching alongside thousands of others on Yom HaShoah, from Auschwitz to Birkenau, where the official memorial would take place. As we made the trek on foot from one camp to the other, walking along the train tracks that had once brought so many of our people to the gates of hell, I walked with determination and solemnity. I knew exactly what to expect, since this was not my first time there. However, as we got to the infamous entrance to Birkenau and saw the gate where the trains used to enter, a wave of emotion came over me that I had never experienced. For whatever reason, my message, my mission came to mind, and it was overwhelming. I thought as I walked through the gate, about the cost our ancestors have paid to pass down the traditions, teachings, and customs of our people, and how today, despite the unimaginable price that those who have come before us have paid to ensure that our generation would inherit our faith and path towards exaltation that it offers, that we have not properly accepted and appreciated the gifts that we've been given. That feeling in that terrible place was staggering. It was, for me, a defining moment. It was hard to gain control of myself, and only when my friend, Rabbi Elliot Perlson, sat down next to me, put his arm around me, and whispered in my ear, "I get it," did I understand in that moment that there are Jews who recognize what I was feeling. There are Jews who are committed to achieving exaltation through their Judaism. And there are Jews who say, "Not on my watch will the links in the chain of our people be broken." My mission as a rabbi has always been to bring Jews to appreciate all aspects of their heritage, to transcend present-day culture and explore as well the scholarship of our tradition, the wisdom it imparts, and the methods by which such thinking makes our lives meaningful. And perhaps I've never said it this bluntly. Maybe the timing wasn't right. Maybe I didn't have the chutzpah. Maybe because there had never been corona. But I see this pandemic as a wake-up call, the likes of which we have never experienced. While the Torah mandated every year that Jews take a full year to pause their businesses and focus on the spiritual, that is not a practice that is practical in our day. Nevertheless, COVID didn't care what was practical. It changed the rules. It forced us to retreat from our routines and hopefully to reassess how we evaluate what truly gives meaning to our days. It has, though, given us this moment to pause and consider how we will emerge and who we will be on the other side of this pandemic. It is my sincere hope that when we finally put this pandemic behind us, we will emerge as individuals and as a community in constant search of translating our faith into thought, of thought into action. And from our actions, we will find exaltation, our sustained set of moments where we recognize the role of the divine in our lives. God willing, this will be our last High Holy Days ever separated from each other. Soon we will emerge from our isolation and we will venture back out into the streets and the thoroughfares. As we do, let us not just walk out as we have in the past. Instead, let us emerge prepared to investigate the depth and breadth of our faith and seek out ways to transform our thoughts into action. Let us emerge seeking the monotheism that Abraham discovered and the exaltation Abraham, Joshua, Heschel yearned for. Let us emerge as proud members of this holy congregation, eager to dive deeper into the ritual, programmatic, liturgical, and intellectual offerings that Temple Beth Am offers, and let them be for us paths that lead ultimately to exaltation. Let us emerge as a community that cherishes time and recognizes that it is through our congregation that we together mark our holy occasions, commemorate our past, and prepare boldly for our future. Let us emerge willing to forego our material desires that may be fun and interesting, but do not transcend our intellect nor penetrate our souls. Let us emerge inspired to be Jews, to satisfy the needs of our souls, to recommit to the ideas and traditions that offer paths towards exaltation, paved with opportunities for us to share together the elegance and grandeur of our tradition. And let us emerge proclaiming, as did our prophet Ezra, "To you, O God, is the greatness and the power and the splendor and the glory and the strength for everything that is in heaven and on earth. Yours, O God, is the kingdom and the exaltation over us all. Ken Yehi Ratzon." This should be God's will. Amen.